So now we're going to transition into talking about standard, which basically add like 5 turns to the format, and now we're in Strixhaven standard. So to kick this off, I'm going to let you do the honors to read this card, Covert Go Blue. I think it's a very CGB-ish card.
The honor is mine. So 2 and a white, Elite Spellbinder is a 3/1 flying human cleric. When Elite Spellbinder enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. Before I throw it over to you and get your take on the card, I want to say the flavor text on this card is literally says the following: Paulo Vito Dama Rosa, World Champion, XXV1. That's 26, right? World Champion 26. The art is Paulo's face on it. Paulo got this honor by becoming the freaking champion of the world, which is one of the hardest. I don't know what it is to be the champion of the world at things. I've only been the champion of the world at one thing ever in my life. It was the X-Files trading card game in like 1997. And it was not hard because nobody played that game. Like, I walked in and there were people who had never played it before in that tournament. And I had been playing it for like a few months. Anyway, what I am saying is, to be the Magic the Gathering world champion has to be one of the hardest things ever to be the world champion of, especially with the way the system is, the MPL, and how hard it is just to get anywhere near that. And I feel like this is one of many, but a very, very good way to show the champion the frickin' respect they deserve. And the way that they rolled the card out and the way that they put it in the flavor text and made it clear what this is, so that it's not like Fervent Champion. Everybody has to explain Fervent Champion, right? And I'm glad that Javier got a card, but people don't even know that. Yeah. And this is this is our frickin' world champion right here. I love it.
Yeah, dude. And I mean, it's only fitting that it's Paulo. I mean, a lot of people currently think he is the best Magic player in the world. Definitely in the conversation for top 3. So, I mean, congrats to Paulo. The card turned out really great. And it's a powerful card as well. So, people are calling this like the white mistbind click.
Yes. That's the one.
So now that card has flash. That card is kind of broken. Elite Spellbinder is probably a little bit less likely to be broken, but still a very, very strong card. So the first thing to note about this is that the card remains exiled even if Paulo dies or leaves the battlefield.
Yep.
So if you have ways to blink this, like we were talking about, there's that card in the Mystical Archive that blinks a card twice, right?
Is it Ephemerate?
Ephemerate,
maybe.
Which is a pretty bonkers card. That nets you 3 cards out of the opponent's hand with the Elite Spellbinder. And if they go for removal and you do that in response, that's basically game winning, I think. So blinking this card starts to kind of cascade and get nuts. But even just playing it the fair way, right? You slam this down, you take whether it's your opponent's counter spell or their thing that they were going to cast next turn. I don't know, in an aggressive deck, you could just nab your opponent's Wrath the turn before they cast it. There's just a lot of cool things you can do with this card.
This card has a ton of applications, and we can just kind of graze the surface. But for example, how do you like the curve of Brazen Borrow their thing, untap, Elite Spellbind it so it's not coming back for another turn or 2? That's Reflector Mage, and you're not down any cards. In fact, you have a 3/1 Air Force backed up by another 3/1. That's
nasty.
That's pretty good stuff. You talked about blinking it. There's this card called Yorion. It hasn't rotated yet. It's not a trap, by the way.
What card? CGB? I don't think I've heard of this card.
Yorion. But anyway, like stuff like that seems really straightforward. One thing that I really like about this card is that the information is something that is so foreign to white. How often does white get to know your hand? How often are you playing the white aggro deck being like, Extinction Event, I don't know, Shadow's Verdict, like what do they have that's going to wreck me? How do I play this turn? You get a lot of information from Spellbinder. Like the tax, it wouldn't be good without the tax effect, so I'm not downplaying that. But just the information of how your white deck should proceed to attack the opponent. Should you power up Faceless Haven? Do they have a Heartless Act? Like that kind of stuff is huge. White can't usually play face up like that, and now they can. I think this is like, this is the best white card I think I've seen.
Ever?
in this set, for sure. Not counting Mystical Archive, because Swords to Plowshares is there and that got banned. But it this is going to be hard to top for this set. And the only recent card I can think of in the ballpark is Skyclave Apparition. And that card has been a rock star, a multi-format rock star. And similar to Skyclave Apparition, like a lot of the same things that work with Apparition work with Spellbinder, so they're going to be friends. And like I'm going to do things like use Nico and bounce my Spellbinder and play it again and just keep taxing their whole hand. And it's going to be fun.
Yeah. There's an established history of disruptive 3/1 flyers being good in Magic in many, many formats. And this one is no exception. I think that this is one of those cards where if you're building a white deck with creatures in it, like this will be in your should I include this card pile every time.
Oh, it's in a tough spot too at 3 mana, but absolutely.
That's the biggest problem with it, right? Is that white literally just, I don't know, just in general, the 3 mana spot's kind of glutted at the moment.
What do you think of this card with Winota? It's a hit off Winota.
Yeah, that's pretty gas.
It's really good.
Kind of locks it up for the following turn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just has so many applications. It's a human, it's a cleric. They're printing a lot of clerics in this set, by the way. So,
I felt it should have been a wizard. Am I crazy?
Yeah, I think you're right. It literally has spell in the name. So
should be a wizard.
I don't know. Maybe.
Hollow's definitely a wizard.
Like wizards cast the spells and clerics bind the spells. I think that's what we're getting at here.
Okay.
At any rate, another card where there are just many, 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 many applications for this card. It's very flexible, and keep an eye out for it. It's definitely, it's like, I feel like it's 100% going to hit standard. Do you think that's...
I predict it's a top 5 card in the set.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
I think that's...
I was going to say top 10. I think it's better than that.
It is. This card is very good. So, good job, Paulo. You deserved it. Okay, next card is another excellent card. Rip Apart. Costs a Boros. 1 red, 1 white. Sorcery, choose 1. Rip Apart deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's a lot of modes, man. That's a lot of modes on one card.
Yeah, it's Rip Apart! Okay.
It's Rip Apart!
That will never happen. Because it doesn't go face.
I was thinking it too.
That is the biggest problem I see with the card, quite frankly.
Yeah, it doesn't go face. Yeah. Well, that's just not something they want us to be able to do in standard, apparently.
It's a good card. Like, I think it's going to be strongly overrated because it looks like a card that's never dead. And I think the big issue with it is that sorcery speed and reactive instead of proactive. So I don't think you can have too many reactive cards in your deck. And while it looks like it always has a target, it doesn't kill something if it has toughness that's greater than 3 or is indestructible. So you do need a variety of ways to interact if you're trying to push through your creatures in your Boros deck, which is probably what's happening. You're probably attacking. So I don't think you can afford to just smash 4 of this into your deck. I think it's a good sideboard and good 1 and 2 of.
I was just gonna say this reads to me like a 2 main 2 sideboard kind of a card. Like let's say you're playing against mono white aggro. This is the kind of card you definitely want a lot of copies of, right? But yeah, if you end up playing against control, you might board them all out. Definitely like if you're playing these colors, I feel fairly confident that you will run some number of these in your 75, and you should.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I was just going to say what I already said, which I think people are going to overrate this card by a lot, though.
I agree. Yeah, main decking 4 of these feels just wrong to me. That's like that would only happen in like a kind of a meta that reminds us of, people who are like ether gusting main and stuff, right? Like a kind of an imbalanced meta. But in the dark, you definitely don't. All right, hit this next one for us. Venerable Warsinger.
Speaking of cards I'm going to rip apart, Venerable Warsinger is 1 red and a white for a 3/3 Spirit Cleric at rare with Vigilance and Trample. Whenever Warsinger deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage Venerable Warsinger dealt to that player. What do you think?
Can we say dies to everything? Let's move on. I was gonna say dies to Frostbite and Rip Apart. Move on, but then I realized this literally dies to just about every removal spell in the format, right?
Not Bone Crusher Giant.
Not Bone Crusher.
It can't get through a Bone Crusher Giant though. It trades with it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's hard. How do you get excited about a 3-mana 3/3 no matter what the text line is if it doesn't have an ETB, doesn't have haste, and
doesn't become a 5/5?
Doesn't become a 5/5 to get through a Lovestruck Beast somehow. Yeah, you just can't right now in the format. You can't.
Yeah, this card I feel confident sees no play outside of some very particular deck or very particular scenario.
I'd love to be wrong, by the way. Like if these cards, I feel like they're in the prehistoric times of Magic were, good and interesting, and in modern Magic have been unplayable because the power level has gone up so much. So if we get back to this being good, I'll be happy.
Compare this to, what was that called? Taranika, a Crowan Veteran or something like that, right? Which was...
Taranika? I think it is.
I don't know how you pronounce that, right? But I'm pretty sure that was a white card. It was like a 3/3, and whenever it attacked, it made another one of your creatures into a 4/4 indestructible creature. Right?
Yeah, yep, that's the card. Play a lot of those.
I think this is that was a better card than this, and that saw strictly 0 play in standard. So
you're right.
Yeah, not common and high on the Warsinger for sure.
Compare it to Luris.
Yes.
There you go.
Just compare it to Luris. Okay. Let's see. Hit Velamarcus Lawhold for our CDB.
5 red white for a total of 7 for an elderly legendary creature, Elder Dragon. 5/5. Here we go.
Clear the throat. Put on your reading glasses. Get ready.
Flying Vigilance Haste. Whenever this card attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to this critter's power from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. What do you think of the Boros Elder Dragon?
Boy. I mean, I'm thinking like, I don't know, dude. Is this our next hit off of Luca? Is this a reanimate target? I don't know. Like that's the only direction I'm trying to go with this card. Maybe if there's like a show and tell card in standard, right? You play this.
If this is your hit off of Luca, right? And you hit a 5/5 Flying Vigilance Haste. And you attack with it. And you trigger it. And you look at your top 7 and you get, I don't know, like a Scorching Dragonfire and you kill a 2/2. Was it worth it to build your deck that way? That you gave up your own creature, you played your Luca, it resolved, the opponent didn't interact with it in any way. Is that a play that wins the game is what I'm asking.
It definitely doesn't win the game.
Yeah, and that's what I like. That's where you have to be with those kind of all-in strategies, I think.
Yeah.
So we can't just hit. My point there isn't that it's not worth doing. My point is that you can't just hit a random removal spell or a typical spell in your deck and be fine. We need to hit something epic. And what is it? We go 7 deep. We get what's probably up to a 5 casting cost spell. What is it?
Yeah. No, that's a good question.
We could
do Transmogrify, right? We could just do another one.
Transmogrify your own dragon into another dragon.
We're just going up the chain.
Yeah,
baby.
You just blew your combat step for nothing. Good one.
Imagine if, I don't know, man, because you probably just want to run freaking Dream Trawler like we always did, right?
Yeah, well, one of the cool things is you can hit the Lorehold command with this.
Ooh,
that's flavorful. Right. Is it a winning play?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, that is like Lightning Helix and draw 2 cards. That's a lot.
Right. I feel like how we have to evaluate this card is, and you nailed it, is it worth it when you're cheating? Because there's just, in my opinion, no other reason to play this card. Right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure I haven't convinced myself it's worth it when I'm cheating.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong. So, I mean, otherwise it's kind of like nice 5/5 haste flyer for 7, bro. You know, it's like, can I interest you in, I don't know, Goldspan Dragon?
Goldspan Dragon's a good card.
Goldspan Dragon is basically this card, right? Like, it's basically this card for 2 mana cheaper. Like, I don't know. That's why would you play this card?
7 is so much. It's so much.
Man.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So moving on. Let's see here. Got some commons and uncommons. Why don't we just skip to Strict Proctor?
I appreciate that.
Unless, let's see, hold on. Okay, let's talk about Thrilling Discovery. The people might try to play this card.
I was going to say, if you're going to make me talk about Seize the Spoils, you're probably talking about this one.
Yeah, I don't know where this one shows up, but it's a card. So Thrilling Discovery, red and a white sorcery. You gain 2 life. Then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. So this is basically an upgrade to Cathartic Reunion, right?
In a few ways. It's not just the 2 life. For one thing, you can cast it with an empty hand. If you top deck it, you couldn't do that with Cathartic Reunion, although all you're doing is gaining 2 life. Yeah, but that's true. It's also important that the discarding effect is part of the resolution. So
that's very true.
You don't get blown out by a counterspell where you discarded 2 cards and draw nothing. If this spell resolves, you gain the 2 life, then you make the decision. You get to discard the 2 cards and draw 3. They can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. It could actually be worse for you if you're really banking on discarding that stuff, right? This is like one of the nice things about Cathartic Reunion is that like it gets your Phoenix into the graveyard regardless of whether it resolves or not. So anyway, situational. Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those cards that shows up if there's a very particular deck that has a need for the discard and the draw.
And there are cards that definitely think about what's in the graveyard and like the size of a spell in the graveyard to exile. And I think it actually, a lot of people are going to say 2 life, that's no big deal. I think when you're talking about 2, 3, and 4 mana spells, tacking on some amount of life gain actually is a big deal because it's the negative tempo that's created when you spend a good portion of your turn on something that doesn't affect the board. It's been a problem with so many cards for the last several years. It doesn't affect the board. It doesn't affect the board. It's a dirtle card. Life gain doesn't affect the board, but it makes it more likely that you'll be around longer to affect the board, if that makes sense.
Agreed. I mean, what I'm hearing from this Covert Go Blue is that this card has a certain amount of, it's a lightning helix in it.
No, I refuse.
He's moved on, which is what we're going to do. So why don't you read Strict Proctor for us?
This is 1 and a white for a 1/3 spirit cleric with flying. Whenever a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. It's a Hushbringer that you can buy your way out of.
Yeah, it's a fat lot of nope going on with this creature. I mean, Okay, so it being a 1/3 is a fairly substantial upgrade, I would say, to Hushbringer in a format with, I don't know, Bone Crusher Giant. So that's pretty gas.
It's
Um,
true.
yeah, this will be here when Hushbringer rotates.
Also true.
Doesn't have lifelink.
Nope. Is relevant types, Spirit and Cleric. I just there's a few problems I have with it. The biggest one is like ETBs aren't much of a thing because the value is all wrapped up in adventure cards that you cast the spell and then you cast the other side. Like those don't have ETBs. You don't shut those down. So like, what are we really stopping? Look,
Yeah, I mean, in standard, I definitely see us revisiting this card post rotation.
sure.
I do feel like, yeah, I don't know. I guess my question is like, would I currently rather play this card than Hushbringer if I wanted the effect?
I don't think so. I think
I
getting to buy
probably
your
wouldn't.
way out is really bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, remind me, does Hushbringer say permanent or does Hushbringer say creature?
It's creatures entering the battlefield and dying.
Okay, that's interesting. So this being a permanent could matter.
So this does. There was some controversy on the stream I saw that was talking about this. Shout out Crokies. But it doesn't stop sagas. It looked like it could, but it doesn't.
That's because they're not ETBs, right?
Yeah, it's
they
because the
go.
counter got added.
Yep,
Which
that's
yeah, that's what
yeah,
triggers it. The counter triggers it, not entering the battlefield.
that is a good rules interaction to be cognizant of for sure. Um, just another thing as well on that same vein, like anything that says like this creature enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it, stuff like that. That stuff still happens as well.
I think that the place that it works the most is to hose its own color, which is super awkward because I think the best ETBs are going to be Paulo's card, the Spellbinder,
Apparition
and Skyclave Apparition. Yep.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, so this is another sideboard card if it sees play. Or I don't know if we get into some kind of naughty meta where there's some deck that really goes off with its ETBs. But yeah, for the most part, sideboard / no play is what I'm predicting for this card.
Agree.
Cool. Okay. We have another lesson. So, Spirit Summoning, 1, and then it has 2 Boros. 1 Boros, right? So it can get paid with 1 red, 1 white, or 1 red. And it is a common sorcery lesson, and it creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So just again, updating our idea of how good these lessons have the potential to be. CGB, do you see this one being playable at all in standard?
No.
Neither do I.
Here's the dude. The lessons are going to be the thing of this set where you're going to read them no matter what, right? Because they're lessons. Is that
Exactly?
okay?
That's what I'm going to do.
Good. Expectations have been established. We can move on.
Okay, sounds great. I'm glad we're on the same page. Okay, how about Sparring Regimen, CGB?
2 and a white for an enchantment. When Sparring Regimen enters the battlefield, learn. You will freaking learn if you're going to be part of this regiment. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature and untap it. What do we think about this?
What? This is an interesting card to put learn on. Like it's flavorful, but otherwise, I don't know. Is it trying to scam us into playing what is otherwise a not very good card?
Maybe, but I feel like Luminarch Aspirant was a lot better than I thought it was. And this is a card that sort of replaces itself with what's likely to be some selection, but a substandard card, and gives you a Luminarch Aspirant like effect, but also vigilance, which often mattered on the creatures that are getting those +1/+1 counters to just crush races. I don't think this card is as bad as it reads, and that's weird because normally I would trash this card.
I mean, I'm kind of coming down on trashing this card for sure. One of the things I don't like about this is that you have to actually attack to get the effect, right?
Whenever
so
you
it's not at the
attack.
beginning of your combat step.
That's correct. Yes.
Yep. So that's one of the things that made the aspirant so good, is that you get the counter regardless, right? Whereas like with this card, you just, like if you don't have a good attack.
It's also 3 mana. Like 3 mana
Yeah,
white is
dude.
the most competitive spot in Magic right now somehow, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think they were really hoping that the learn would pull people in on this, and as such, I'm going to call this card a trap.
oh, I will agree. We can move on.
Okay, cool. Right on. Semester's End, 3 and a white instant at rare. Exile any number of target creatures and/or planeswalkers you control. This is sounding eerily familiar, CGB.
Go on. Go on.
Go on. where where does the bird noodle enter the equation? Okay. Y'all really need
Go
to
on.
watch this on video. At the beginning of the next end step, return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. This card reminds me a lot of a card I get to play for free.
but you can run it in your 60 card deck, and it will be legal when Yorion rotates.
Okay, it's fair enough. I don't know. You're gonna have to sell me on this card.
I'm never playing this card. Glorious Protector is an option.
That's the card that you're excited
Yeah, Glorious
about.
Protector is really underplayed, and for good reason. Right now, it doesn't line up great, but in a world without Lovestruck Beast and in a world without Yorion to trigger those ETBs, I think Glorious Protector is going to be a serious card. I've been impressed with it in a lot of spots and matchups. It's just outclassed in the format at the moment, and that's the card you should be playing because it's a body, and things that come with a body are better than things that don't.
Yeah. This, and spoiler alert, this is not a way to play around your opponent's like wrath effect either. So don't be trying to think they're going to leave up 4 mana for this effect on the off chance that it's good for you.
I mean, you're going to get somebody in the play queue. Good.
Sure. It's going to happen. Someone's going to build a deck around this. I'm going to feel stupid, and life will move on. Okay. Which is what we're going to do here. Okay, next lesson, CGB. Read Reduce to Memory.
Reduce to Memory is a 1 white sorcery lesson. It's an uncommon. Exile target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token.
What do you think?
I don't think it sucks.
No, I don't think it sucks either.
I'm pretty okay with this one if we're going to play Learn. For a few reasons, like if you have a goat token from a Woe Strider and you want to turn it into an actual threat, you do this on your own stuff. But more likely, you're getting rid of one of your opponent's key cards and replacing it with something that's not nearly as good. And the exile part is important. It's kind of hard to get a spell that just exiles any target, any kind of permanent at a low price. So it gets around indestructibility, for example, and it can hit enchantments and artifacts. It can kill gods like Klothys that are hanging out on the battlefield that are otherwise really tough to remove, and they can't get it back, like with a Banishing Light. So I think this card is better than Banishing Light.
Probably.
And you get it somewhat for free, so I think this is a really good one.
I think it's a good card. Think about this. Think about how often your Skyclave Apparition dies immediately and your opponent immediately gets like a 3/3 and you still feel fine about that exchange, right? Now, granted, that actually forced your opponent to do something to get that token back.
Yeah,
but we also didn't get Skyclave Apparition pulled into our hand whenever we wanted to for free. So this reminds me a little bit more of Skyclave Apparition than I at first would have thought. And it's just, I think that time has proven that this kind of an effect is often still worth it.
I do want to say, like, we're talking about for free. Like, in Best of One, it's completely for free. because we're not using our sideboard and lessons are coming from the sideboard when the learn mechanic goes off. In best of 3, it does take up your sideboard spots, and this is definitely a hot medium at best sideboard card that you're never bringing into the main deck. So your deck would have a pretty bad sideboard if it had to run a lot of cards like Reduced to Memory. So in best of 3, there's a pretty serious cost. In best of 1, though, it is really close to Skyclave Apparition because this spell is free from playing something else. As long as the thing that you played to get it is a fine card, you're good. Like, this is a good card.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to play that the 2-drop 2/1 and learn and get this card into my hand. I think that's a pretty solid turn 2 play.
Agreed.
Cool. Okay. This next card's kind of a meme, but it's a fairly powerful card, so we'll read it. Reconstruct History, 2 red whites, sorcery at uncommon, return up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target enchantment, instant, sorcery, planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. So you can get up to 1 of each of those, and then you exile Reconstruct History. Covert, go blue. Are we ever going to play this card?
It's 4 mana, draw 5, dude. It's just straight up, and none of them are lands. They're all bangers.
It's all gas.
100% banger draw, 4 mana, draw 5.
All gas.
I mean,
all the time.
That ceiling is good, right?
Ceiling's good. Yep.
Okay. Floor. God, the
card?
deck building
Nothing?
cost. Dude, the deck building cost of like perfectly balancing all this. Will it be good? It could be. Like, I can picture a control deck that runs all of these types. Like, I could go down the list and name one of each of these types that I would run in my control deck.
Yeah.
So does a control deck want like a graveyard based draw 5? I don't know, man.
Yeah,
It's not terrible, but I'm also thinking the amount of time it takes to get all this stuff in the graveyard and the amount of mana, and I'm thinking we could Dance of the Manse. That would be fine. And
yeah, we could Showdown of the Scalds, right?
But yeah, cards like this don't have a solid pedigree. Like, there was a Seasons Past deck that the great John Finkel top 8'd a Pro Tour with, and Seasons Past reminds me of this.
That was gas.
It was the only time that deck ever won anything. It was a terrible deck. It was gone from the meta a week later. And it was because it was freaking John Finkel playing.
Yes. Oh, it's casually the best Magic player of all time, you know?
And so the other one, like, there's Vivid Revival that I think returned 3 multicolored cards from your graveyard to your hand. I made control decks with that. It was clunky, very unwieldy. So I don't foresee this being a thing, but I'll try because I'm an idiot.
It's a good card to know is in the format, and has the ceiling, as you said, is very high. I mean, it's an achievement unlocked if you get 1 of each, right? You gotta try it for that at least.
Oh yeah.
Saffron Olive's definitely going to be playing with this card at some point. Okay. Read for us Radiant Scroll Wielder.
This is 2 Boros, or 2 red white, 4 mana total. 2/4 dwarf cleric at rare, and the instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. What do you think? Soulfire Grandmaster's back?
She looks so good, CGB.
Really?
She looks so good standing over there on the other side of the street, tempting me.
You want to play this card? Okay.
To build a silly deck that I really shouldn't be playing.
What are you going to put in it? Let's go.
No, I mean,
give me your first 3 picks for the deck.
That's the problem. It's I'm just joking, man. I think that this card is a trap. I think that people will feel enticed to play it. I don't think you should play it. I can concoct scenarios in which this card is quite strong, but I don't know. So one of the issues is just that you have to consistently have instants and sorceries in the graveyard. The at random thing is an ouch, right? Like, even if you're building a deck around this, the fact that it happens at random is just kind of brutal.
I mean, kind of, but then the other way that you can look at it is how many are you going to have in the graveyard at one time? I mean, I've played with Dreadhorde Arcanist, and usually your option is like one thing, and one thing that's in your hand that you could cast to use with the Arcanist. This is more like, all right, I mean, I probably got one Soul Seer, so that's what's going to kill something this turn, you know?
Yep, that's true. I mean, yeah, there are games and board states in which this card would be excellent, but just the whole kind of 2/4-ishness, the whole 2/4 for 4 aspect of it.
Not impressed, huh?
Is not hot, no. If this were like a 2/2 for 2, I'd be a little bit more interested in it.
Yeah, the 4 mana is the part that gets me. That we're playing, or we need a turn, you know? We're paying 4 mana for something. Its board impact is not good. You have to untap with this card, and when we say things like that, well, when you untap with this card, it's so good. I think of cards like Nissa, and I think of cards like Goldspan Dragon, and they still did something the turn you played them, and then when you untap with them, it's even more busto. And this is almost nothing the turn you play it, and when you untap with it, you still need a spell in the graveyard that has a relevant target and should be played this turn that you can exile, and then you still have to pay for it, right? Yeah, it's not free.
Yep.
Yeah, you still have to pay for the card.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just compare this to like Winota, right? I could be casting Winota at this mana cost.
Yep.
I could be casting Halvar, God of Battle.
Okay, now you're just burying the card. You are stomping on it. I'm done. Can't defend that.
So just think about what else you could be casting in that slot. Okay, let's move on to Illuminate History. This is a rare sorcery lesson, 2 red. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. This is a spicy lesson, and I'm going to put it right on the plate and hand it over to you, Covert Go Blue, and see what you think of this card.
4 mana is a lot. The idea also that you play a learn card and then get this directly to your hand means, though, it's not that far from a Valakut Awakening, because you did get this card for somewhat free. You know, you paid a cost and it went straight to your hand. You didn't have to draw it. It didn't take up a spot in your deck. And it's an interesting one because there are a lot of decks like this, and cards have a lot of costs like this, where they're situational, right? You run a Fire Prophecy in your deck, but now you're up against an opponent who doesn't have cards with like 3 toughness or less as creatures, and you just don't have targets for your Fire Prophecy or your Heartless Act or your whatever, or your Shredded Sails. And if you are in a situation where you look at your hand and you say, this Akroan War is never getting cast in the matchup I'm in, you can go get this Illuminate History as your option, and then you can turn those into some real cards. And if you discard enough cards or have played enough cards, you also get a board presence, which is better than the typical Wheel of Fortune type effect. So this card, I think, is best of one good. I don't think this ever takes a spot away from your sideboard in best of 3. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's solid. I think especially there are certain decks which have additional ways to leverage a card like this. So, for example, you could be putting Ox of Agonis from your hand into the graveyard.
It's true.
You know, making that better. Even something like pitching one of your Haste Phoenixes to this isn't the worst. So there are ways to kind of mitigate the cost, as it were, and just turn this into a more raw card advantage. So yeah, I don't hate it. I can definitely concoct matchups, scenarios, decks that would feel happy to play this card, and snatching it out of the board for free is pretty gas.
I don't know if like this is going to be possible with the set, but say like you have 2 really good learn cards at like a 1-drop that learns and a 2-drop that learns, and you play, 1-drop learn, 2-drop learn, turn 3, like another 2-drop that learns, and you just grab like 2 learn lesson cards that suck in this, so you can turn those like free lessons into good cards.
Just pitch them.
Yeah, just pitch them.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. It sounds stupid, but it's not that stupid, because Yeah, you'd probably rather have a random card from the deck for free in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the other thing is that yeah, getting the free creature out of this is like that turns it into quite a good deal, I
Yeah.
think. And one final thing to note is that if this ends up being the last card in your hand, but you do have the at least 7 cards in the graveyard, you can just make this a 4 mana 3/2, which, is not great, but hey, if it's the last card in your hand, it's better than nothing.
You're not wrong, but I often, like, when I hear those things, I think, and you can hit the concede button while you're at it because you're empty-handed and you spent 4 mana on a 3/2.
Hey man, sometimes those red decks they just need another thing to put that Embercleave on, right?
Okay. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So let's talk about a creature which who knows whether this creature is ever going to wear an Embercleave. Why don't you read Hoffrey Ghostforge?
3 and a red and a white, so 5 mana. This is a dwarf cleric that is legendary. It is a mythic. It's a 4/5. And spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit, in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard.
Okay.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's
Is it
an
good?
interesting effect for a Boros card. This reminds me of Nightmare Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly similar effects, right?
Kind of.
Yep.
It doesn't get a stats reduction, though. In
That's
fact,
true.
it gets a buff. It comes back
That's true.
bigger than it left if it wasn't a spirit before, with trample and haste.
It also reminds me a little bit of Mothra.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
a little bit similar to that card as well.
It's also weird that it puts it back in the graveyard.
After you're done with it.
Yeah. That's kind of bizarre. Not usually text that you have or is needed, quite honestly. Because you kind of got extra value out of it already. It gives everything like a second life, but it's 5 mana for a 4/5.
Yeah. Yep. That's the problem. And one of the reasons I was comparing it to those other cards is just to get a reference for like, has this effect seen play? And the answer is really not much. So I kind of don't imagine that this is going to be any different. The whole like Anthem for Spirits thing is just something to take note of. Like if this were a top end in a deck that had a lot of spirits, that would be something in its favor.
I mean, yeah, do you play this with your Clarion Spirit deck and just get a ripped army up there in the sky and beat them down?
Do it. Yeah. I mean, this card definitely reads like a meme to me.
Yeah, I don't think it cuts it. Because while all those things sound good, they don't add up to what a Goldspan Dragon is.
Yeah, that's the reference.
That's the bar.
That's what we should be comparing, 5 mana mythic cards to. Okay, gonna read this one real quick because it probably will show up at some point. Heated Debate, 2 and a red instant at common. This spell can't be countered. CGB's favorite words on a card. And it says Heated Debate deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So one of my first questions for you, Covert Go Blue, is this better or worse than Soulseer?
Worse?
I think it's worse, right? I feel like the only reason you play Soulseer is that it kills those 5 toughness things that you otherwise couldn't deal with.
Indestructible. Seasoned Hollowblade. Like, Selfless
I guess
Savior.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of nice too. But in a vacuum, I do read this card as being worse. There are definitely metas in which it's better, though, right?
No.
You don't think so?
Nope. I don't think anybody's trying to counter your removal spell for a 4 power or 4 toughness or 4 loyalty planeswalker or creature.
That's fair. I mean, I could have definitely seen this card taking out a Nightpack Ambusher, right? Okay, maybe I'm just reaching. Maybe I'm just reaching. I think that people will at some point play this card in the format.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether it's right or not, I think is up for debate. Okay. Why don't you read Efreet Flame Painter?
3 in a red for a creature, Ifrit Shaman. This is a 1/4 rare with double strike. A 1/4 with double strike. Let's go. Whenever Ifrit Flame Painter deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead.
Didn't we just read this card?
Did we?
I'm just kind of making a joke.
I think you're trolling me.
Because this is like another 4-mana, like randomly statted creature that wants spells in the graveyard for some reason, right? Like
I know from looking ahead that there's a cycle of cards that you can like pay 2 for to discard to get like an effect, and they're really powerful. So then the idea is you play this and you pass the turn, and then the opponent does absolutely nothing, and then you untap, and then you attack with this, and the opponent has absolutely nothing to block with, even though they just had a whole turn where they could have done anything they wanted, but they actually did nothing. And you attack with this, and you hit them, and you cast that spell from your graveyard. Not only that, you hit them again because you have double strike. You are so freaking awesome, and you cast another spell from your graveyard.
Banger. Yeah. You know what you're going to say the first time you lose to this deck, Covert Go Blue, is your deck sucks, right?
No, I don't say things like that. I simply go and I have this button I hit that says end stream or delete recording, and we move on.
Go rage outside for half an hour.
I put my head out there in the icy cold waters of Lake Michigan underwater, and I scream where no one can hear me but the fishes.
Yeah, so once in the format when you lose to that deck, that's the appropriate response. For the rest of the time, for those of us trying to play, furrowed brow Magic, this is kind of a move on, never read this card again, kind of a Magic card.
This card gets killed by heated debate, so I'm not interested.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. You can't even counter it in your sweet little blue-red counter spells. Taste it. All right. This is a kind of a cantrippy card, so let's read it. Curate 1 and blue instant at common. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on the top of your library in any order, and then draw a card. So this is a little worse than, what's that card called?
Strategic Planning?
Strategic Planning, but you get to play it at instant speed.
I mean, so, I thought it was a reprint. Think? Apparently it's not. Like, this is a new card. I mean, it's one more for Preordain, right? And at instant speed, because it's kind of a Scry 2, but they go in the graveyard, which I guess is a little better than Scry 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Omen of the Sea, but it puts in the graveyard instead of scrying, so it's potentially better than an Omen of the Sea if you have graveyard synergy.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a world where the pieces come together, and this is the right card for your deck. I don't think it dramatically makes anything playable, unplayable, or significantly better. It's just one of those little pieces where it might give you a little more value in a certain kind of deck than what our current options.
Yeah. I compare this card to Anticipate, and it's been a while since Anticipate was a playable card in Standard, right?
Yeah. Again, I think that putting stuff in the graveyard has to matter. You have to actually want some of that, because remember, Discovery Dispersal saw a lot of play, and it was mostly for Discovery, and this is that card at instant speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So,
this is what you play in your Efreet Flame Painter deck to make sure that you have your bangers in the graveyard for when you need them.
Yeah, that's actually true. And that doesn't mean that deck is worth playing, but it means that this card might see play if a strategy like that looks good.
Yeah. I mean, they're pushing it so hard, CGB. They so badly want us to be putting expensive spells in the yard and then getting some payoff. And
Let's
who knows?
yeah.
Like maybe they'll tip the scales. You know what this is reminding me of? The Giants deck from Kaldheim. Like it's like a deck where they're really pushing it. They're trying to make all the pieces. They're trying to give us like these big mythic cards and these common cards and blah 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 blah. And it just still doesn't get there. So that's the vibe that I'm getting off of this deck.
Let's get to the bank. Like, there are some big spells that are designed, and we'll talk about it even more. Like, we're not going to get away from this deck, but I have some rants in me when we get to some of these cards.
Okay, sounds good. Then let's talk about, why don't you read for us Blade Historian? I know that you were finding this card to be pretty interesting, so I'll let you take us into this one.
Hybrid red-white, 4 of those.
Yep.
4 Boros hybrid manas. This is a human cleric creature at rare, a 2/3 body with a just proof that you don't need 50 lines of text on a card to matter. There, you can just have a powerful line on a card. Yeah. You don't need a million options. You don't need it to be a charm. You don't need it to be a double-faced weirdo creature that's also a spell. It can have one line. Here's a line that's an example. Attacking creatures you control have double strike.
Yep. I mean, you have my attention.
So I think a lot of people immediately, like, I want to say 4 mana, 2/3, attacking creatures have double strike. Why is this better than a Torbrand? Why is this, why would I play this instead of Embercleave? And you wouldn't, because Mono Red has access to this effect already.
Exactly.
Mono Red is fine.
The answer is this is not replacing Torbrand.
Yeah, this may as well not even necessarily be a red card. This is a white card. This is a Boros card. Like, if you're playing Mono Red, you don't really have a use for this, but those Boros struggles with, like, the closing. Like, that's what we've seen. They can run Showdown, but they have a lot of trouble closing the deal because it's harder for them to cast Embercleave, and they don't have a Torbrand. But this does that job. This is a human Winota.
Definitely a solid hit off of Winota.
A hell of a hit off Winota. Like, everything gaining double strike out of nowhere, basically, and this being indestructible and in the red zone, that's intense. Yeah. That is very strong. It is 4 devotion, either red devotion for Annex. Like, think about that. Annex just got +4/+0 and double strike.
That's nasty.
Yeah. Or on the other side, it just turns Heliod on, all on its own. Like, Heliod becomes a 5/5 double striking indestructible attacker when you drop Blade Historian.
With haste, essentially.
Sort of, yeah. Yep. It can be kind of out of nowhere. How many times have you had the white deck? This happens to me all the time. They've got a Heliod, but no other creatures. And you're like, I'm okay. Even if they top deck Linden, it won't turn on their Heliod. You know, they have to get 2 permanents on the battlefield to kill me. They could just top deck this or run this out of their hand, and on its own, now they're hitting you with Heliod, and you're just dead. Just dead.
So, and here's another thing that I think really makes this card more interesting is, you know, because I'm sure people are going to be like, but CGB, it dies to Frostbite, it dies to this, it dies to that. That's all very true. But this is also in the color where you're heavily incentivized to run the Doggo, for example.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
And there are going to be times when this hits the battlefield and you have a Doggo or an Alcid or whatever, right? And your opponent looks at their hand and they look at the board and they're like, I am dead this turn. That's the way it's going to play out, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to remember that. It's not to say, like, this card is weak. It is fragile. It dies a lot more easily than a Torbrand. So that is very, very true about the card. But it is also a must kill. It is also usually like a win the game the turn it hits the board kind of a card. And yeah, very easily defendable in white. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah, and like just some cards that are around this shell, like the Spellbinder, the Paulo's card, like that that with double strike in the air
Ooh,
is a
that hits
lot.
real hard.
And you know,
Yeah.
you have good information, right? You know
Yep,
if your historian
exactly.
is going to work. So that's a big deal. And I would say, you know, you can ask the question, is it better than Halvar? Because the current version of the white deck was running Halvar God of Battle, mostly because they wanted to play a Sky Maul and then give the creature double strike and end the game. And I think this is arguably better than Halvar most of the time. All creatures with double strike is better than equipped creature with double strike in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, think about the curves, right? This is a curve you could easily hit in this deck. You could go turn one, Doggo, and then turn two, just your choice of whether it's Hallow Blade or Luminarch Aspirant, right? And then turn three, Spellbinder, turn four, Blade Historian. That sounds like a real dead opponent a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time. That is going to be a very difficult curve to keep up with for a lot of decks.
Without having seen all the cards, do you expect this to make like a top 10 list?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm ready to come in on this card that hot.
Okay.
Because I feel like, yeah, like, okay, this isn't feeling like a Goldspan Dragon to me, for example. This isn't feeling like an Embercleave to me.
I mean, it gives Goldspan Dragon double strike.
It does. It does. Yeah. I'm not willing to comment on it that hard. But I think this is what I'll say about this card. I think that this card is going to be more playable than it looks.
Okay. All right. I think it has top 10 potential.
Okay. Yeah. That's it. So CGB coming in hot on the Blade Historian.
I am.
But what you should take away from this conversation is that I think this card is better than a lot of people think it is. So yeah. Okie dokie. How about academic probation? 1 and a white sorcery lesson at rare. Choose one. First option is choose a non-land card name. Opponents can't cast spells with a chosen name until your next turn. Option 2, choose target non-land permanent. Until your next turn, it can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. I'm kind of not feeling this card.
What is up with, not only do we have to learn and now we go to our sideboard and we pick out our lesson, but now we might also have lessons with multiple options.
Yeah. It's getting kind of messed up. I mean, this is starting to feel like school, right? Like reading the set is starting to feel like college.
I mean, yeah, I gotta take some notes. I gotta get a study group together. I also, it doesn't make sense. Have you ever been on academic probation before?
I don't even really know what that means.
Okay. Academic probation. The art looks like very intense. It's more like you get your grades up or you get expelled.
I see. Okay.
So I would have pictured this card's effect to be something along the lines of Heliod's Punishment, where like you have to like remove some task counters from it, or if like you can't, like maybe you have to pay a mana, and then if you don't pay 3 by the 3rd turn, like it gets exiled or something. Instead, we've got this weird nebulous thing, and like, when is this the right card to fetch? When you just want to name Ultimatum and get one more turn?
That's exactly what I was asking myself. Like, I was like, is this really ever the card I'm going to go to my sideboard to get? It's so narrow that, like, okay, sure, this might win me a game every now and then, but I don't think this is worth devoting a sideboard slot to, unless, like, maybe you have a very wish-body thing going on in Best of One where this is another one-of that you have for a very specific matchup. But honestly, I'd probably rather just run a second copy of a better lesson.
Yeah, I don't know when I'd fetch this lesson, and I'd probably put one in there for a while and just keep track of if and when that came up. If it didn't come up in my first week, it's just done. I'm off this card forever.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Just think about like your typical board state, you know? Like, this isn't going to shut down and okay, it stops someone from equipping an Embercleave on the following turn, maybe, right? Which is just not that great. It doesn't shut down a Great Henge basically at all. it just doesn't really do anything. Okay, all right, that's where we're gonna come down on that card. How about Flame Scroll Celebrant CGB?
1 in a red for a 2/1 human shaman at rare. Whenever an opponent activates an ability that isn't a mana ability, Flame Scroll Celebrant deals 1 damage to that player. 1 in a red, Flame Scroll Celebrant gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And there is a backside, because it's a DFC. And the backside is called Revel in Silence. It is white for an instant. Your opponents can't cast spells or activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities this turn. Exile Revel in Silence. Like, what?
Didn't we just read this card?
Except it's an instant, so you can play it on their upkeep. And it affects all of their spells. Can't cast spells or activate Planeswalker's loyalty ability. Okay, that's a much bigger effect. Like, they just can't play anything if they don't have instant speed.
Attack, right?
Yeah, they still get to attack
you. That's kind of it.
That's kind of it. There was a card called Abeyance way back in the day before things got errated that would shut down your opponents even tapping their lands for the turn that you played it, and it drew a card.
Nasty.
So Revel in Silence reminds me of a very light version of that, but it's like that. Like, time has proven that these kind of cards aren't very good if they don't say draw a card, because you spent a card and the opponent still got to draw their card and attack with their creatures. And that's usually the two things that you most need to worry about: what's happening on the battlefield and who has the most cards. And you did neither. And then on the other side, the Flame Scroll Celebrant says half your cat oven doesn't work. Or you know what I mean? It just shuts down the life gain. That was supposed to be legal still, by the way, Cauldron Familiar. But I can't get excited about this card either. What do you think?
Yeah, so the front side, I compare it to Harsh Mentor, which saw surprisingly little play, I think. This being a 2/1 is kind of awful. So, and then that pump ability, I mean, it's the pump ability is priced to move, but it is also just kind of weird.
It's priced to fail. Like, you're going to hit him with that 4/1? You're just going to get in there?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, overall, not feeling this card. Don't think this is going to be like the next auto include in mono red. This certainly isn't going to be knocking Robber of the Rich off of its pedestal.
Or anything in Boros. Yeah, I don't see this at all. Dud.
Yeah. Weird card. Too bad. Okay. Cody, Vociferous Codex. Which, okay. I need to go on a little mini rant here. I couldn't even get to the mana cost. Like, does this make you cringe, CGB? We're gonna make a codex. It's a creature. We need to give it a name. What are we gonna... Cody. That sounds like a legendary artifact book creature who is a codex. Really? Okay. All right.
Really?
CGB's like, really? This is what you're getting upset about?
No. I get it. Go on. This pet has been unleashed on Arena because if you buy the pre-bundle, you get this as a pet. Every time I see it, I'm like, what the freaking cartoon nonsense? This was like in the first Care Bears movie. This character, and dude, what is this?
This is straight out of like Beauty and the Beast, right? Like, this is one of those dancing animated things from the Beast House. Whatever. Okay. So, Cody, the Vociferous Codex. See what they did there? Yes, we do. Okay. Costs 3 generic mana. This is a legendary artifact creature construct. It is a 1/4. The first line, you can't cast permanent spells. Oof. Okay. That's a pretty big deal. But you can pay 4 mana and tap Cody to add Wooburg, 1 of each color of mana, to your mana pool. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value than the card you cast, by the way. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is like one of them like brain in a jar style, like total build around weirdo deck cards.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, this strikes me as like a really fun brawl commander.
Oh
Um,
God, I didn't even. Oh no, I didn't even think of that. Okay.
that's that's where I'm going
All
with Cody,
right.
man. Do we
Wow.
do we see
No.
anything do we
Oh
do we
God.
see anything happening in standard with this? I mean, it's just
Uh,
so weird, right?
there are. It had to be like an artifact creature, right? So it gets killed by anything that affects an artifact and gets killed by anything that affects a creature. So it's a easy
Hmm.
target, and it's
Hmm.
3 mana for a 1/4, which is a decent but not completely unassailable body. There are some decks that will struggle to just kill this when you cast it on turn 3. If you untap on turn 4 and making Wooburg allows you to cast your spell, which is tricky because that means
Hmm.
you can't cast something that has a double amount in the cost.
Right. And you do want the spell to be hopefully a heavy hitter,
I'm trying to
right?
think of like a 5 mana
And
spell that, like Lorehold Command.
I
There
was
you
gonna
go.
say a Lorehold command is a good example of what you want to cast off of this.
And then you just whoosh, here goes my deck. And
Hmm.
it's gonna hit an instant or sorcery. It kind of has cascade, right? That's what it
Yep.
is. And you
Yep.
get to cast
Exactly.
another something. And the problem with all those instants and sorceries, like a big problem with them is a lot of them are conditional. They're spot removal.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you don't want to hit spot removal that has no spot, right? Is it optional? Until the end of turn, you may cast. Okay, good. Because
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
was required, you'd end up soul searing your own Cody.
Yeah. Your own Cody. That would be savage.
So you need a lot of like card draw to hit. But if your deck
Hmm.
is full of card draw, what are you drawing into? Just more spells, and now you're just every turn is going to be activate Cody, cast 2 spells, and somehow you're going to win from this.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know,
It's
man.
the other thing is that like if you're using that Wooburg to cast like some actually bigger game ending spell, then you're kind of hoping for that spell to just carry the weight, right? So apart from this being like a ramp spell, it's not like that's one of the things that Cody lets you do is ostensibly fix your mana perhaps a little bit and like generate an extra mana. So maybe it helps you cast like a 6 mana spell a little bit sooner than you would have. But I mean, I'm reaching here, like it's yeah, this card is very weird and it's hard for me to see it showing up in any non-meming context.
I think I hate this card.
Okay, so you hate it for potentially different reasons than
I
I
hate
hate
it.
it.
I hate it for being a book with a stupid name. I hate it for you can't cast permanent spells. What kind of reading keeps you from like summoning a creature? Like what the hell's
Yeah,
wrong with that?
yeah.
I don't know. I hate this card. This card's stupid.
Get this card out of my set review. Okay, how how about CGB Magma Opus?
I see what they did there.
Yeah, it's another really
Six
witty card
colorless
name.
mana for and a blue and a red for an instant mythic. Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, draw 2 cards. And then you have this option of paying an Is It hybrid and an Is It hybrid. And you discard Magma Opus and you create a treasure token. What are they doing?
So I guess the joke here, right, is that on turn 2 you discard this and make a treasure token, and then on turn 3 you cast your 4 mana, Mizium, play this from the graveyard spell, right?
Yep. Your thing that cares about the big spell in the graveyard.
Yep. Or your whatever that 2/2 creature is that gets buffed. You
With
just
Ward.
want
Yep.
whatever your hard hitting 4 mana spell carrying thing is, right? Of which we've seen a number of options.
Yep. I
Um,
wish I could remember the name of it, but yeah, it's a 2/2 for 2 and 2 blue with ward. And when it enters the battlefield, exile an instant or sorcery from your graveyard and put half that many +1/+1 counters on this card. Yeah.
Right. So that becomes what? A
6/6.
A 6/6?
Or 5/5?
No, I
it's
think
an
it's
8/4/6. 6/6.
Yeah. No, half +1. That would make it a 7/7, right?
No, it's not +1. It's half. It's half rounded up.
Oh, half rounded up. Okay. So it would be a 6/6. You're right. Okay. Which is like cool, bro. So we played a 6/6 with ward on turn 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do worse in a game of Magic, I suppose.
I mean, that's really good. That is not going to be beaten solely by a Lovestruck Beast, which is a bar that we've talked about many times. And they probably can't remove it for a while, 2 or 3 turns. And even if they have a Heartless Act, that just removes a few counters from it. It doesn't kill it. So, but here's the rant I have in me about these cards. Even if this turns out to be good, where you either have a way to cast this with the Efreet after discarding it to make a treasure and ramp out the Efreet, or you discard this and you make the 6/6 by exiling it. Even if that turns out to be good, I hate that kind of Magic. I hate Magic that's like, well, I have my Magma Opus, I drew that. Hopefully I'll top deck, I guess, this Ifrit card and it'll actually hit. And we just are all in on this strategy because I've been trained to evaluate things based on their individual power level. And when synergies like this get pushed hard enough, they become real. And they might be pushed hard enough in this set. But I just hate playing Magic where if I draw this card and this card, it's broken. But if I only draw this card or only draw that card, it's meh. And then when I play the mirror and my opponent has it and I don't, I want to uninstall.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that. That's not Magic for me.
Well, here's another thing that's kind of annoying about it. It's one thing if you, with your clever brain, take like a bunch of disparate random cards and turn them into like a genius deck that does a cool thing, then you feel really cool playing Magic, right? But when they hand you a deck, which is basically what's happening here, they're like, hey, player, tap, tap, tap on the shoulder. Here's like 15 cards. You should put all of these in a deck together and sleeve them up. And that's a card in this format. You don't even feel clever, right? Like you don't even feel smart for having put it together. So yeah, it's kind of a cheap trick, in my opinion. And not like, it's, I don't know. And let's just talk about the face of this card. Like CGB, if you spent 8 mana to just cast the spell, even at instant speed, would you feel stoked about it?
No, I guess if you have nothing else to do with your mana, you're glad you had the chance. But Inspired Ultimatum laughs at this.
I'd much rather turn my land into 2/4/4 angels than cast Magma Opus.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, yeah, including this card in your deck is kind of saying, I'm just looking to discard it and make a treasure. I don't like it. It makes me sad.
I'm not feeling it either. I'm not feeling it either. This, like, I really wanted to look at this card and be like, oh, sweet.
Oh, boom. That's the payoff. But that's the thing. They made it so that if you cast it the normal way, it's not that good because they knew that the whole thing was going to be about cheating it anyway. It wasn't designed to be cast this way. And this is supposed to be some kind of like Prismari expression, with Magic. Like you're expressing yourself by creatively casting this spell, not doing the normal thing of tapping the appropriate amount of mana that's written on the freaking card to do it, and it doesn't feel, that doesn't feel creative to me. It's like they tried to make Spell Reanimator, but they forced it so hard. We're all looking for it. We know what we're trying to do here, and it might turn out to be good, but I'm still not stoked.
Yeah, this is a miss for me as well, for sure. I think maybe they were also worried that with that other clause on it, with the bottom clause on it, it might just be a little bit too good as a fair Magic card, right? Like to have these 2 modes on it. So anyway, not stoked, basically. Not stoked. Okay. How about Expressive Iteration? Blue and a red, sorcery at uncommon. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand. Put one of them on the bottom of your library and exile one of them. You may play the exiled card this turn. This card, I had to read it a couple of times, but I liked it a lot more on my subsequent reads. So here's my initial hit on this card. If you're lucky enough to hit a land off of this card, you can make this be play a land, draw a card. Which, and the nice thing is that you draw the best of the other 2 cards. And so, that makes it like, if you hit off the land, it's, I don't know, it's maybe not as good as a growth spiral because it's not like, it's not
yeah, it doesn't ramp.
Yeah. But you can do worse, right? You can do worse.
Well, it's hard to hit a 2 mana draw too, anymore. Like you kind of have to have of one mind where you have to play these creature types. Like the stage required you to damage the opponent. This is a lot of ways a 2 mana draw 2, but you have to play it later in the game. You can't play it on turn 2. So
well, you can. It's just that you're really Well, I guess no, you're right. Turn 2 you can't play it. Turn 3 you could play it and hit your land drop.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So you're a little bit mana inefficient, which is, I think it's a fair card. I don't think it's busted. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's fair, but it has draw 2 potential. And then, of course, later in the game, you don't take the land. You take 2 spells, one that you'll cast now, one you'll cast later. So it's all right. It's hard to see where it fits. It's a card that will probably make some archetype a little better, but I'm not sure exactly when or where.
Yeah. This card is honestly like, I might be more interested in trying to storm off with this in Historic, for example. This is the kind of card that, like, it adds to your spell count. Maybe if Magecraft, if we're trying to trigger Magecraft, right? This could be an important part of that equation. Might help you more likely hit 2 spells in 1 turn. And then if you're also triggering like cascading benefits from that, then it could all add up. Or, if prowess, right? We have cards like the Pixie Dragon or whatever. So yeah, it could all come together. But definitely you have to, like, this card isn't just good. You have to figure out how to make it good. Cool. All right. How about Elemental Expressionist, CGB?
Hybrid blue-red ×4. 4 mana, it can be blue or it can be red.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's looking like this is a cycle. Yeah, like each college has one of these 4-cost rare cards.
Well, the last one had 1 line, and it was attacking creatures you control have double strike. This one appears to be a book of text, and it's a 4/4 instead of a 2/3. So let's get into it. Creature Orc Wizard, Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, choose target creature you control. Until end of turn, it gains, if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. And when you exile this creature, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. What is this?
Wait, hold on. I need to read this again. So, cast or copy an instant or sorcery. You choose a target creature you control. If it would leave the battlefield, it gets exiled. And when you exile this creature, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. So the joke is that you exile the Elemental Expressionist, you get a 4/4, and then this comes back at the end of the turn, right?
It does.
Or it doesn't.
I don't think so. I think it's just
it
gone.
Doesn't come back.
I think
so. Why? Okay, this is super weird.
Well, it's saying if something would die, then instead you bolt their face and you get a 4/4 instead of it dying?
I guess.
Super
weird card.
Okay, so help me. I thought that when, like, if a token would go anywhere, it gets exiled, right? So this says whenever you exile this creature. I don't know, man. What am I looking at? This
I'm struggling.
I don't know what's going on.
I kind of feel like we don't have to figure it out because this card isn't good.
I don't think so. Like, you have to play a spell to activate that, right? That's the trick. If you just tap out, you get a 4/4 with no abilities, and if the opponent just kills it or kills you or goes over the top and does something that ignores it, then you haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nope.
This card is weird.
Have you ever watched Supergirl on the CW?
No.
Because the art looks exactly like the Martians from the series Supergirl riding a panther that's on fire and with tornadoes in the background, and that is all so much extra, and this card is so not. It's blowing my mind.
Really not living up to its potential here, that's for sure. Okay, we have a lesson here in a foreign language, so let me follow this and see what it says. Okay, this is very simple. It is a sorcery for 3, is it? So 5 mana total, and it says, it's a lesson, and it says create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. So, is this one better than the Boros one?
The Boros lesson?
Sorry, the Lawhold one. The 3/2 for 3.
Oh, that exile's a permanent? Oh,
no.
Yeah. No? Yeah?
No, so there was the one for
I already forgot the boring ones.
I know, right?
Okay.
It was just one Boros for a 3/2.
During the lesson. I didn't learn anything, bro.
CGB.
I was
trying to do a
in
podcast
class again,
here.
Man. I'm sorry, it was too boring. It's common.
He's like your classic slacker who gets an A anyway.
I need to get beaten down by the common at least 4 times before I acknowledge its existence.
Yeah, so this is probably about as playable as that 3/2/1 is, which is probably not playable.
You said 3/2/1.
I did say that, which is the cleverest thing that's happened in the last 5 minutes.
I am really back in school. My attention span and my maturity levels are plummeting.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Meme Haven. Are we ready to call this set Meme Haven?
I could.
Okay. How about this next one, CGB? Creative Outburst. Let's see if this is better than Magma Opus.
3 blue, red for a total of 7 mana. It's an instant at uncommon. It has that same clause of hybrid is it to discard it and create a treasure token. Creative Outburst deals 5 damage to any target. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Oof. What?
I mean, Prophetic Bolt was a 5 mana instant that did 4 damage to any target and let you look at your top 4, pick one and put it into your hand. That saw play in its time, which nowadays is laughable because the rate is so high and so bad. And this is, again, you have to cheat it. And even if you do, like,
it's just not that great.
It is 5 to any target. You can dome with this.
I mean, this Inspired Ultimatum kind of puts this to shame, right?
If you're going to cast something for free from your yard, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I said what I would say about this card, about Magma Opus, too. Like, I don't love this style.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And I honestly, I didn't even read this card before I selected it. I just thought that it was in that same cycle and worth at least considering. But yeah, this doesn't measure up particularly well. Okay. How about another really weird card? Wandering Archaic is a 5 generic mana colorless creature avatar at rare. It says, whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2 generic mana. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Did I mention it was a 4/4? I don't remember.
You
did. It is a 4/4. Okay. It has a backside, and the backside is Explore the Vast Lands. It's 3 generic mana. It is a colorless sorcery, also a rare. Surprise. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card and or an instant or a sorcery card from among them, then puts the cards they revealed this way into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Each player gains 3 life. I don't know about you, CGB, but I'm not getting Golos vibes from the Wandering Archaic.
I think I zoned out somewhere in there because I don't remember what you said about the second half, and I'm trying to reread it, and I keep on failing. Each player looks at the top 5 of their library, reveals a land card and or an instant sorcery card.
Mm-hmm. So you're hoping to hit both.
And puts them into their hand, so you just draw them. You might. So each player might draw 2?
Yep.
Each player gains 3 life?
Yeah, it's a weird card.
What? Why would we do this?
I think the idea is that your opponent's playing a creature deck, and so they just get a land, and they gain 3 life, which doesn't matter, right? And then you get a land and a sorcery, and you gain 3 life. So I think that the idea is that it's supposed to be better for you than it is for them.
Okay, so, all right. So against the deck that doesn't run instants and sorceries, you want to play the backside.
Backside, exactly.
And against the deck that runs instants or sorceries, you want to play the front side, because now if they cast instants or sorceries, you get to copy them.
Mm-hmm. Because think about casting the backside against a spell that does have instants and sorceries is a disaster, right?
Probably.
Like, you basically spent 3 mana, as in like most of or an entire turn.
Unless you already control the front side, right? Because then you give them a card that you're probably going to copy.
That's true.
Or that they have to pay more for. I'm still not paying 5 mana for this 4/4. I'm just not doing it.
Neither am I.
What a weird looking thing, too. like this thing coming over to hang out with me? No.
It's like, it's some kind of like mashup of like a Hindu deity and like an Egyptian dog deity or something.
What's with all the birds on the back? I don't know. This card's weird. My brain rejects it.
Review strikes again.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. There were no birds mentioned in the card, okay? But how about it? If you control this and the opponent casts Alrund's Epiphany, what happens?
Either they pay for it, or that's true. Who gets the turn first?
You
get the turn first, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
We proceed as normal, and we all have birds.
It's kind of like it's like Lucky Clover, right? You get the copy before the original resolves.
Sure.
Yeah. That's we really got him, CGB. We really got him. They'll just foretell it and play it on the following turn.
No. This card is weird, and maybe I'm even underrating it, but my brain is rejecting it. Okay.
You're not.
Okay.
We can safely move on from this card.